Good morning, everyone. We have a girl show for you today. Sagar is out. Where is he, Krystal?
Sagar made a little trip down to Austin to record a couple podcasts with Lex Friedman and with Matt and Shane on their podcast. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of those, and he will be back here on Monday. But very glad, as always, to have you here with us, Emily.
It's such a blast, and when Sagar goes on his honeymoon, everyone will get an extra dose.
That's right.
The girl show.
Yeah,
so
buckle up.
tuned.
That's right. That is coming very soon. In the meantime, we have very much news to bring you this morning.
It's morning in America, folks.
I saw Ryan make the fascist and furious joke yesterday.
Good
job, Ryan.
And then someone tweeted like 9 sequels to come.
Yes,
What are we on Fast 20 now?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And many of those sequels are coming this morning. So some pretty wild picks that we'll go through, some very interesting ones. We're also taking a look at Elon's influence on this administration. Some reports that the staff is already getting irritated with him because he's just like around all the time. So, and of course, there's always jockeying for power. And right now, Elon appears to have Trump's ear. So look into those dynamics as well. James Carville absolutely shocking me and saying that, hey, maybe that Bernie Sanders had a point. Can you imagine? I never would have thought that those words would come out of his mouth. David Brooks has also said something similar. Wild times we're living through here, people. At the same time, New York Times facing a lot of scrutiny over taking down a video because it showed actually the polar opposite of what they had originally claimed that it showed and no longer served their narrative purpose, so they pulled that. I'm taking a look at what billionaires want out of the Trump administration, and we've got a great guest on the Democratic side to talk about how Democrats failed to appeal to young men, so that should be an interesting conversation as well.
Hugely interesting conversation, and speaking of interesting conversations, Krystal, we are about to have one because we could go ahead and put A1 up on the screen.
Yes.
Donald Trump nominated Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General of the United States yesterday evening.
Yes,
and Krystal was celebrating right away.
This is my cup of tea right here.
She was like, this is surprisingly refreshing.
It's something. It was surprising. That part was true. This Axios report talks about how Republicans were stunned and disgusted at Trump picking Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Now, I think the spin on that would be, he's unorthodox on this and that position. True, he is, no doubt about it. Yep. But he also is just an unrepentant asshole and is probably the most hated figure among his colleagues on Capitol Hill. You can back this up probably better than I can.
Yeah, he even among Republicans, first of all, even among Republicans, as you said, like MAGA-type Republicans, I was talking to one source that's definitely MAGA yesterday, and it was just, that source described the reaction among types on Capitol Hill and on the House side as, quote, Veep-ish. Everyone was just shocked, and he is, to your point, Krystal, he's really beloved by the base. Like, if you go to a Trump event and Gaetz is there, like, people love Matt Gaetz who are not, like, in D.C., which, to most people would be like, oh, that means you're doing something right. That's a good thing. But in this case, it's because the more you've, like, interacted with him, the more you're like, oh, no. Like, you are just in this for fame and podcasting, and now I guess that's Attorney General.
Definitely the vibe. I have my own personal experience with him. We interviewed him a couple times over at Rising. Some of those times were actually even before Sagar was there, when it was myself and Buck Sexton that was co-hosting. And I remember one memorable incident in particular where he was quite upset with the tea selection in the green room and started raging at the intern there about how inadequate it was and storming around. So that's just kind of the vibe he brings to the table. I saw some people even Matt Stoller was like, oh, look at he's good on antitrust. And it's true. He likes Lena Khan. He does genuinely have some outside of the traditional Republican type of views. But that also, in my opinion, is definitely not why he was put in the job. There's a few things that are going on here. I mean, Trump says he wants retribution. And Matt Gaetz is the type of guy who will deliver for him in that regard. In the first administration, Trump kept asking his White House lawyer, Don McGahn, how can I get the Justice Department to do what I want it to do and basically be a tool for me? And the topic came up so often, according to reporting, that ultimately McGahn, and it was someone else who was in the administration at that point, whose name I'm blanking on, wrote a memo of listen, the Justice Department is supposed to be independent. Here is what you can do. Here's what you can't do. And it was, they, made a point of not only sending this memo to Trump, but also leaking it so that there would be a record that they had instilled in him, like, here are the rules and the boundaries, because this was something he was very interested in. What he figured out in the first term eventually is that even though he couldn't just like call Jeff Sessions or whoever was the AG after that and be like, I want you to go after this person, that if he said something publicly, then if he had someone who was sufficiently loyal in that position, they would pick up on, oh, he wants me to do X and Y and Z. And so John Kerry was one of the people, I don't even remember what this beef was over at this point, but was one of the people that had pissed him off. And so he talked about that publicly. The Justice Department started investigating John Kerry. Jim Comey was another one, of course. So that was how he did that in the first administration. This time around, you know, he's got a guy who's going to be even more, who already really knows who Trump would want him to go after. The other piece with Matt Gaetz, and we could put this next part up on the screen that is significant to note, is he immediately resigned his seat in Congress, which is unusual, because in 2 days' time, the House Ethics Committee was set to vote on releasing what's described as a highly damaging report outlining its investigation into Matt Gaetz, according to multiple sources familiar with that probe. So by resigning immediately, before that investigation comes out, and again, this is an investigation from a Republican-controlled House, he's hoping to short-circuit the release of those findings. He had previously himself been investigated by the Justice Department for potential sex trafficking of a minor. No charges were ultimately filed. This ethics investigation is said to be related to that line of inquiry and perhaps some others. One of his colleagues has accused him, one of his, Republican colleagues, Senator Mark, what's his name? I always forget his name.
Mark Wayne Mullen.
Wayne Mullen, yes.
Mark Wayne Mullen, yeah.
That last name always throws me for a loop. Anyway, he has accused Gaetz of always showing around on the House floor pictures of naked pictures of the women that he's sleeping with and various things of that nature. So that's the type of guy we're talking about here. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll get your reaction, Emily, and see if you agree with that or what you think is going on here, is there's been a lot said, of course, about the potential damaging information possible that's out there on Matt Gaetz. In one hand, that seems like, oh, that could be a problem for him with his colleagues. Obviously, they don't like him already. This report could still come out. You only need one Republican on the committee to actually vote for it to come out and join the Democrats for there to be a majority for it to be released. Could also very easily be leaked. But the other piece of that is if you're Trump and you know some damaging information about Matt Gaetz, that also gives you an insurance policy that this person is going to do exactly what you want them to do, or else you have this damaging information that you also could very easily release.
That's a really smart point, actually. I didn't even think about that because it would make sense that Trump would want total compliance in an attorney general role,
Absolutely.
obviously. Like you said, Gaetz already kind of knows the types of people that Donald Trump would want to go after. And this is one of the big debates in the Republican world, period, right now, is what to do with lawfare in a second Trump administration, because this sort of consensus position is that you have to fight fire with fire. So if they're going to go after Donald Trump with the fire of their own lawfare, Comey is a really good example of this. I mean, I think there were some pretty obviously objectionable things, even some people on the left, especially.
I agree with that.
I mean, it was outrageous, some of the things that James Comey did. So then the debate now on the right is whether you have your own James Comey, right? Do you put Comey in here to sort of who are you going to spy on? Those types of things.
Right.
And these questions are actually very much being debated. And Matt Gaetz comes down on one side of that debate.
Yeah.
And I think, Lee Fong wrote a piece, actually, it's up in Unheard this morning, about how Matt Gaetz has I think it was called the progressive populist case for Matt Gaetz. And I'm reading it, I'm like, actually, Matt Gaetz has some really genuinely heterodox, on Syria, on Africa. His policies have been consistent and sort of libertarian foreign policy type things. And then on the other hand, he's been so good on Lena Khan. Just when nobody else is defending Lena Khan, Matt Gaetz will defend Lena Khan. And it's just okay, all of that may be true, but he's crazy.
I'm glad I'm not the only one at this table saying that.
He's crazy.
It's like Trump is not mostly ideological, right? And so if you're trying to parse and think that any of these picks are really about ideology, they're not. They're about who he thinks. First, sometimes it's who he thinks looks the right part, right? And like, or who he liked on Fox News or whatever.
Yeah.
And with this one, remember J.D. Vance during the campaign said that the attorney general position was going to be one of the most important ones. With this one, I think loyalty, like having someone who is going to be a sycophant, who is going to do exactly what he wants him to do, that is the main qualifying position. It, I don't think, had anything to do with Matt Gaetz's position on Lina Khan, because I mean, Elon Musk, who is...
Although that is relevant at DOJ.
It is relevant at DOJ. But I mean, I would be shocked if Lina Khan stays in her job, because you've got Elon Musk, who was Trump's biggest funder, and we're about to cover how influential he is in all of this. He is at war with Lina Khan, as are like almost the entirety of the billionaire class, quite a few of whom lined up behind Donald Trump. So it would be shocking to me if Trump didn't deliver her head on a platter for a lot of the big donors who are backing him. But you know, the other thing I'll say about Matt Gaetz, I'm curious your read on this one too, Emily, is that when this first came out, a lot of people across the political spectrum thought like, well, this is just kind of a ploy. Gaetz is like a sacrificial lamb to kind of like grease the skids so that other nominees make it through the Senate more easily, because he's so wild and out there that Republicans in the Senate can show that they have some independence by voting him down, and then it'll make it easier to get the rest of the nominees through. I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. I think Trump, and there's reporting to suggest this now. In fact, I think we might have some reporting on this. But anyway.
Mark Caputo reported on it,
Right, so Trump is very serious about getting Matt Gaetz in. And if he wants a nominee in, he's gonna get a nominee in, which is why I always thought, you know, the RFK Jr. getting floated for like, you know, some cabinet secretary, and people are like, I won't make it through Senate confirmation. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Trump has already gamed out how he can either put people in as acting secretaries, as he's done in the past, or the real plan appears to be to use recess appointments to get anyone through who wouldn't otherwise pass confirmation. And I think it's true that Matt Gaetz would have trouble getting through, or, you know, even this Republican Senate. They have a 53 to 47 seat majority. But if you think of like, you know, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, there you go. There's your three.
Well, you just mentioned Mark Wayne Mullen, who's like a conservative stalwart.
Actually, I think he's already come out and said that Trump knows what he's doing. And so don't get me wrong. The overwhelming, like probably 50 of the 53 senators are likely to back every single one of Trump's picks, no matter how wild they are. But it still does put you on the margins with Matt Gaetz, where he could get voted down going through a Senate confirmation process. But, you know, reportedly, they already have discussed how they're going to get around that and circumvent that. So I think you can expect Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General of the United States.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation in conservative circles where people, to your point, Krystal, were sort of shocked by this. And they were like, it must be 4D chess. Like, this must be a way to get Matt Gaetz to be governor of Florida. So Matt Gaetz drops out of his seat, he becomes governor of Florida. Or it's like you said, greasing the skids. So if you don't want to vote for Matt Gaetz, that's fine. Make sure you vote for Pete Hegseth, right? Like, I understand, okay, Gaetz, I get it. It's Gaetz, but like, if you're going to not vote for Gaetz, you are going to vote for Pete Hegseth. That is part of, he was like a bargaining chip, essentially. And it could, I mean, it's possible it's a little bit of both, right? That the first and foremost, the reason Donald Trump wanted Matt Gaetz is because he wants Matt Gaetz. And then he realized what maybe puts it over the edge is like, okay, well, say people say that's their line in the sand. Well, we can definitely get Pete through then, something like that. But I think it's absolutely true that he wants Attorney General Matt Gaetz. Like, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think if he wants something, he's going to get it. You know, he's never been more in control of this Republican Party. So the voices of resistance that were there on the Republican side back when he came into office in 2016, I think you're going to see a lot. Not that there won't be any, but I think you're going to see a lot less of that. We've got a clip we'll show you later that I think, you know, backs that up. And so, and the other thing that, you know, as someone who's left of center here, looking at the way Republicans operate and the way Trump operates in particular versus how Democrats operate, Democrats would be like, oh, I don't know if they can make it through Senate confirmation. We're going to try to go ahead and triangulate to the person that we think can make it through. And, you know, about, oh, there's this little rule that might keep us from being able to get it done. And with Trump, it's like, no, I want this thing. I'm going to find out a way to make it happen. And come hell or high water, like if I want Matt Gaetz as my Attorney General, Matt Gaetz is going to be Attorney General. So I think that's probably the way to look at it.
Republicans are very uncomfortable with it. They don't want to. Some are. I mean, there's even conservative conservative Republicans are uncomfortable with it because they were always deferential to Senate procedure and to like the kind of traditions. I mean, they're conservative, but nope, not anymore.
Yeah, well, and we're going to get in a little bit. We now know who the Senate Majority Leader is going to be. It is not actually the pick that MAGA and Trump wanted, but Trump had already put out this thing of whoever is the Senate Majority Leader has to commit to doing recess appointments.
Yep.
This can get in the weeds, I know, but you know, the Senate, it's this very prideful institution, and one of their primary responsibilities is advise and consent on the nominees and going through this process and questioning them, et cetera, et cetera. And all of the people who were seeking that job immediately when Trump said that said, no problem, we'll do it, it's all you. And that represents, you know, immediate sort of abdication of an important power that they had to Donald Trump. So to me, that's indicative of the tone and the, you know, the power dynamics that you're likely to see throughout this administration.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.